November 25th, 1177. The hills near Montgisard, 40 kilometers from Jerusalem. An army moves through the desert, 26,000 warriors. Saladin, Sultan of Egypt and Syria, the greatest Muslim commander of his age, leads them north. The target, Jerusalem. The holy city is defenseless. Most of the Crusader forces are fighting in the north. Saladin knows this. He has divided his forces. Part of his army is already raiding the countryside. This will be an easy victory. In a few days, he will enter Jerusalem. Coming to meet him is a detachment, 500 knights, 4,000 infantry. They are led by a boy. He is 16 years old. He has been king of Jerusalem for 3 years. His body is covered in sores. His face is beginning to disintegrate. The fingers on his left hand no longer move. He can barely stay in the saddle. His name is Baldwin IV, and he has leprosy. Saladin sees this pathetic force and laughs. 500 knights against his 26,000. This is not a battle. This is an execution. The battle lasts several hours. When the sun sets, Saladin's army is in flight. Of the 26,000 warriors, fewer than a tenth survive. Saladin barely escapes, disguising himself in plain clothes, riding a camel through the desert back to Egypt. His camp, his baggage train, his banners, everything is captured. The 16-year-old leper king has just handed the greatest commander of the age the most humiliating defeat of his career. But this only postponed the agony. 7 years later, Baldwin will die, his body completely destroyed by disease. 3 years after that, Saladin will take Jerusalem, the kingdom that Baldwin defended until his last breath will fall. How is this possible? How did the greatest defender of the kingdom of Jerusalem fail to save it? How did a man with such a mind, such will, such courage, lose? This is the paradox of Baldwin IV, and it begins not on the battlefield. It begins in Jerusalem, in the royal palace, when a 9-year-old boy feels no pain. 1166. Jerusalem. Baldwin is 9 years old. His tutor, William of Tyre, notices something strange. The boy plays with other children, sons of nobles, pages, future knights. They fight, as all boys fight. They pinch, scratch, bite. Baldwin does not cry, ever. At first, William thinks, the boy is brave, stoic. His father, King Amalric I, would be proud. But then the tutor looks more closely. Baldwin does not cry because he does not feel pain. William tests him, pricks the boy's hand with a needle. Baldwin looks at the blood with curiosity, but does not pull away his hand, does not wince. Nothing. Loss of sensation in the extremities. The first symptom of leprosy. William knows what this means. Everyone knows. Leprosy is a death sentence. Slow, agonizing, inevitable. The body destroys itself piece by piece. Fingers die. Skin covers itself in ulcers. The face becomes disfigured. A person rots alive, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades. In the 12th century, leprosy is more than just a disease. It is a mark of divine judgment. Lepers are considered spiritually unclean, cursed by God, dangerous to be near. They are expelled from cities, forced to live in isolated colonies called leprosaria. When they must enter towns, they ring bells to warn others of their approach. They cannot touch the healthy, cannot eat from common dishes, cannot inherit property in many places. The church teaches that leprosy is punishment for sin, often sexual sin. The disease is associated with moral corruption, with uncleanliness of the soul manifesting in the flesh. To be a leper is to be an outcast, spiritually and socially dead while still breathing. And this is the heir to the throne, the eldest son of the king, the future of the kingdom. William of Tyre, one of the most educated men in the kingdom, chancellor, archbishop, historian, stands before a terrible choice. Does he tell the king? Does he condemn the boy to a life of isolation and shame? Does he doom the kingdom to a crisis of succession? He tells the king. William informs King Amalric. The reaction is not described in the sources. William writes only that he reported the truth to the king. But one can imagine horror, despair, rage at God. perhaps denial. Surely the diagnosis is wrong. Surely this cannot be happening. King Amalric I is a complicated man, intelligent, ambitious, often harsh. He has fought his entire reign to strengthen the kingdom, to expand its borders, to secure its future. He has led campaigns into Egypt, trying to prevent Muslim powers from uniting. He has negotiated with Byzantium, seeking alliances. He has managed the fractious nobility, the military orders, the endless political intrigue. And now his heir, the boy he has raised to continue this work, is condemned to slow death. But what can be done? In the medieval world, there is no cure for leprosy. The best physicians can offer palliative care, ointments to ease the sores, diets thought to slow the disease's progress. Prayer, hope for a miracle. Amalric does not renounce his son. This alone is remarkable. He could have done it. He could have declared Baldwin unfit to inherit, named his daughter Sibylla's future husband as heir, simplified the succession. Many kings would have. He does not. Perhaps out of love. Perhaps because acknowledging the disease publicly would create immediate political crisis, factions forming around potential heirs, the kingdom tearing itself apart. Perhaps because he hopes, against all evidence, that the diagnosis is wrong, that God will intervene, that somehow this will not be as bad as it seems. Perhaps the doctors are wrong. Perhaps it is not leprosy. Perhaps a miracle. No miracle occurs. Baldwin grows. The disease progresses slowly. This is lepromatous leprosy, the form that kills over years rather than months. Medical historians studying the sources believe Baldwin had what's called tuberculoid leprosy initially, which later developed into the more aggressive lepromatous form. This explains why he lived as long as he did, and why he retained mental clarity even as his body destroyed itself. By age 10, the numbness has spread from his left hand to parts of his arm. By 11, small lesions appear on his skin. By 12, his left hand is noticeably weaker. He can grip objects, but not firmly. The fingers curl slightly inward, beginning their slow transformation into claws. But the mind remains sharp. Sharper, perhaps, than it would have been without the disease. Baldwin cannot run through the courtyards like other boys, cannot practice swordplay for hours, cannot engage in the rough physical play that occupies most young nobles. So he reads, he studies, he learns. William of Tyre is his primary tutor, and William is one of the finest minds in the Crusader states. Educated in Paris and Bologna, fluent in Latin and French, learned in theology, history, and law, William recognizes intelligence when he sees it, and he sees it in Baldwin. William writes of him, he was gifted with a good memory and loved to listen to stories. This is understated. Medieval chroniclers rarely praise excessively, especially about children. For William to note Baldwin's memory specifically suggests the boy was exceptional. Baldwin learns Latin fluently. Not just the church Latin of prayers, but the classical Latin of Caesar and Cicero. He studies French, the language of the Crusader nobility. He learns history, particularly military history, the campaigns of Alexander, of Caesar, of Charlemagne. He studies law and governance, and most important, he studies war. The Kingdom of Jerusalem is a warrior state. It exists only because of military success. Every king must be a military commander. Every noble must be able to lead troops. The entire society is organized around the perpetual need to defend against Muslim forces that vastly outnumber the Crusaders. Baldwin cannot wield a sword properly. His left hand does not grip well enough. But he can ride, and he can think. William writes, he loved riding above all else and was especially skilled in managing a horse. Consider this. A boy whose left hand barely functions, whose body is beginning to fail, becomes the best rider among his peers. This is not luck. This is will, determination, a refusal to let the disease define his capabilities. Medieval riding, especially military riding, is not like modern recreational horseback riding. A knight in battle must control a massive warhorse with pressure from legs, shifts in weight, sometimes voice commands, all while wearing armor, carrying a lance or sword, maintaining formation with other riders. It requires balance, strength, and an almost instinctive connection with the animal. Baldwin masters this. At 13, 14, 15, as the disease progresses, as his body weakens, he remains an exceptional horseman. This will matter. At Montgisard, he will lead cavalry charges. At later battles, even when he is nearly blind, nearly paralyzed, he will be carried to the battlefield on a litter and somehow, we don't know exactly how, direct troop movements with enough precision to make Saladin retreat. But all of this, the education, the horsemanship, the preparation, takes place under a shadow. Everyone knows what is happening. The disease cannot be hidden forever. Each year it becomes more visible. By 13, Baldwin's left hand is clearly deformed. The fingers do not straighten. Lesions are visible on his arms when he wears short sleeves. His face still looks normal. The disease has not yet reached it, but those who know him well can see subtle changes. A slight asymmetry, a thinning of the eyebrows, small nodules beginning to form on the earlobes, and everyone knows what comes next. The progression is well documented. The extremities fail first: fingers, toes, hands, feet. Then the face, the nose collapses, the lips thicken and crack, the eyes develop chronic inflammation, leading to blindness. The voice becomes hoarse as the disease affects the larynx. Sores cover the body, becoming infected, filling with pus, the smell of rotting flesh. Baldwin knows this is his future, and still he prepares to be king. In 1174, King Amalric dies of dysentery after a brief illness. He is 38 years old. He has ruled for 12 years, expanding the kingdom's territory, maintaining its defenses, managing its complex politics. Now he is dead, and the heir to the throne is 13. July 11th, 1174, Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. Baldwin IV is crowned king. Imagine the scene: the holiest church in Christendom, built over the site where Christ was crucified and resurrected. The Patriarch of Jerusalem, Amalric of Nesle, presiding. The great nobles of the kingdom in attendance. The archbishops and bishops, the masters of the military orders, the Templars and Hospitallers, foreign dignitaries, the ceremony of anointing and crowning, and at the center, a 13-year-old boy, his left hand hidden in a glove, holding the scepter awkwardly in his right. His face still unmarred, but those close to him can see the slight changes, the beginning of what will come. Everyone in that church knows he is dying. No one knows how long he has. 5 years? 10? Less? A 13-year-old leper sitting on the throne of the greatest Christian kingdom in the East. The Kingdom of Jerusalem in 1174 is not a large realm. At its greatest extent, it controls a strip of the Levantine coast from Beirut in the north to the Gulf of Aqaba in the south, with inland territories including Jerusalem itself, Bethlehem, Hebron, and the fortress of Kerak east of the Dead Sea. Perhaps 20,000 square miles in total, smaller than modern Israel. But it punches far above its weight politically and symbolically. Jerusalem is the heart of Christendom. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Via Dolorosa where Christ carried the cross, the Temple Mount, the Mount of Olives. These are not just important sites. They are the foundation of Christian sacred geography. To control Jerusalem is to control the most important Christian city in the world. This is why the kingdom exists. In 1099, the First Crusade captured Jerusalem from Muslim rule after nearly 500 years. The Crusaders, French and Norman knights primarily, established a kingdom, built castles, imported settlers, created a feudal state modeled on France but adapted to the realities of the Middle East. For 75 years, this kingdom survived. Through military prowess, through alliances with Italian maritime republics, Genoa, Pisa, Venice, that controlled Mediterranean trade through sheer determination. The Crusaders were always outnumbered. The surrounding Muslim powers, Egypt, Damascus, Aleppo, Mosul, had vastly larger populations and armies. The kingdom's survival depended on Muslim disunity. As long as the Muslim states fought each other, the Crusaders could hold their ground. But by 1174, this is changing. Saladin is beginning to unite Muslim Syria and Egypt under his rule. The strategic situation is deteriorating. And on the throne, a dying boy. The kingdom's nobility understands what this means. Some of them, The pragmatists, like Raymond III of Tripoli, believe the only hope is careful diplomacy, truces with Saladin, buying time until a new crusade arrives from Europe. Others, the hawks like Renaud of Chatillon, believe the only answer is aggressive military action, striking at Muslim forces before they fully unite. These factions will tear the kingdom apart, but not yet. In 1174, Baldwin is newly crowned. He is young, but he is the anointed king. For now, the nobility will give him a chance. Baldwin knows what awaits him. Leprosy cannot be cured, but he is king. He cannot leave, cannot hide, cannot hand power to a regent and retreat to a leprosarium to die in isolation. He must rule, and he rules. At 13 years old, with a body that is destroying itself before everyone's eyes, but a mind that remains sharp, focused, determined. The first challenge comes immediately. The kingdom's enemies do not wait for a new king to establish himself. They test him. The main threat to the kingdom is to the south, Egypt. There rules a vizier named Saladin. Saladin was born a Kurd in 1137 or 1138. His uncle Shirkuh is a military commander for the Syrian ruler Nur ad-Din. Saladin grows up in military camps, learns to fight. In 1169, uncle and nephew invade Egypt. The Fatimid Caliphate is weak, collapsing. They overthrow the old vizier. Shirkuh becomes the new vizier. Within months, Shirkuh dies. Saladin is 31 years old and he inherits the position. Formally, he serves the caliph. In practice, he is the ruler of Egypt. In 1171, the Fatimid Caliph dies. Saladin declares Egypt part of the Sunni Abbasid Caliphate. The Fatimid dynasty, which ruled for 2 centuries, ends. Saladin is now Sultan of Egypt. In 1174, the same year Baldwin becomes king. Nur ad-Din, ruler of Syria, dies. Saladin invades Syria, captures Damascus, declares himself the defender of Islam. By 1177, Saladin controls Egypt and most of Syria. The kingdom of Jerusalem is caught between his 2 domains. Saladin is a brilliant commander, a charismatic leader, a diplomat. He unites Muslim forces under the banner of jihad, holy war for the liberation of Jerusalem from the Franks. And he sees an opportunity. The kingdom of Jerusalem is weak. On the throne, a leper boy. The nobility is divided by intrigue. The army is small, dependent on knights arriving from Europe. Saladin decides to strike. November 1177. Saladin invades the kingdom of Jerusalem with a massive army. Sources give different figures, between 20,000 and 30,000 warriors. This is the largest Muslim force to invade the kingdom in decades. Saladin has been planning this. After consolidating his control over Egypt and Damascus, he sees opportunity. The kingdom of Jerusalem is weak. Most of its military strength is in the north. Count Raymond III of Tripoli is besieging a fortress. The Templars are engaged elsewhere. Jerusalem itself is nearly defenseless. Saladin's intelligence network, one of the best in the medieval world, has reported all of this. He knows the kingdom cannot field a significant army to oppose him. He divides his forces. Part of the army raids the countryside around Ascalon, burning villages, driving off livestock, terrorizing the population. The main force marches north toward Jerusalem. This is not just a raid. Saladin intends to take Jerusalem, to end the Crusader kingdom, to accomplish what Muslim leaders have dreamed of since 1099, in Jerusalem, panic. King Baldwin is 16 years old. He has been king for 3 years, but he has never faced a threat like this. The great nobles are absent. The military orders are scattered. He has perhaps 500 knights in the city, a few thousand infantry, garrison troops, not field soldiers. Any reasonable person would tell him to stay behind the walls. Jerusalem is well fortified. Saladin has no siege equipment with him. This invasion was planned as a rapid strike, not a siege. If Baldwin holds the walls, eventually Saladin will have to withdraw. Raymond will return from the north with reinforcements. Saladin will lose the element of surprise. Stay behind the walls. Wait. Survive. Baldwin does not stay behind the walls. He gathers every fighting man he can find. 500 knights, mostly from the Knights Hospitaller, one of the 2 great military orders. about 4,000 infantry. This is everyone. If this army is destroyed, Jerusalem falls. There is no reserve, no second army waiting. The ratio of forces is devastating. Saladin has at least 20,000 men, probably more. Baldwin has maybe 4,500, 1 to 5, possibly 1 to 6. Baldwin marches out to fight. Think about this decision. A 16-year-old king. His body already showing signs of leprosy, his left hand clawed, lesions on his arms, though his face is still intact. He has ruled for 3 years but never commanded in a major battle. He is leading an army 1/5 the size of the enemy force. Every military principle says, do not do this. Do not risk your entire army in a battle you will almost certainly lose. Do not stake the kingdom on a single throw of the dice. Baldwin marches anyway. The sources tell us he carries the true cross, a relic believed to be a piece of the actual cross on which Christ was crucified, the most sacred object in the kingdom. It is carried into battle only in moments of extreme crisis, when the kingdom's very survival is at stake. This is one of those moments. Saladin does not expect an attack. His scouts have reported the Crusader forces scattered. He believes Jerusalem is defenseless, or at best will huddle behind its walls. His army is moving north in a loose formation, partially dispersed for foraging and raiding. His guard is down. On November 25, 1177, near a place called Montgisard, a hilly region north of Gaza, Baldwin finds him. The details of the battle are poorly preserved. Medieval chroniclers, especially on the Crusader side, tend to attribute victories to divine intervention rather than tactical skill. William of Tyre writes that Saint George, the patron saint of knights, appeared in the sky leading the Crusader charge. A later source claims the Virgin Mary was seen fighting alongside the knights. The reality, insofar as we can reconstruct it, is both simpler and more impressive. Saladin's army is stretched out in marching formation, not deployed for battle. Part of his force is off raiding. His cavalry is not concentrated. He has perhaps 15,000 to 20,000 men in the immediate area, but they are not ready to fight. Baldwin has 500 heavy cavalry, European knights in full armor, chainmail, helmets, shields, on massive war horses bred for combat. These are not light cavalry. They do not skirmish. They charge. They are a blunt instrument, a hammer designed to smash infantry formations. And Baldwin, despite his youth, despite his disease, knows how to use them. He waits until he has the tactical advantage, high ground probably, or position relative to the sun. Then he orders the charge, 500 knights in a wedge formation, thundering down on Saladin's unprepared center. The impact is catastrophic. Medieval heavy cavalry hitting infantry in the flank or rear is like a truck hitting pedestrians. Men are knocked down, trampled, crushed under horses' hooves. The line breaks immediately. Saladin's center collapses. Panic spreads. Troops who were marching, resting, foraging, suddenly find themselves under attack by armored knights. They run. Saladin tries to rally his forces. He is a brilliant commander, experienced in battle, but he cannot restore order. The Crusader charge has shattered his formation. His troops are scattered across the hills, and the Crusader infantry, now emboldened by the cavalry success, press forward, cutting down fleeing soldiers. The battle becomes a rout, then a slaughter. For hours it continues. Saladin's army disintegrates. Men throw down weapons and run. Some try to fight but are overwhelmed. The discipline that held them together collapses. It becomes every man for himself. Thousands die. Contemporary sources claim 90% of Saladin's army was killed or captured. This is likely exaggerated. Medieval chroniclers always inflate enemy casualties. But even if the real figure is 50% or 60%, this is catastrophe. Saladin's camp is overrun. His baggage train, tents, supplies, weapons, treasure captured. His personal belongings taken. His banners, the symbols of his authority, torn down and paraded through Jerusalem. Saladin himself barely escapes. The sources say he disguised himself in plain clothes, mounted a camel, faster than a horse in desert terrain, and fled east toward Egypt. He rides through the night, through the next day, barely stopping, terrified that Crusader cavalry is pursuing him. He reaches Egypt with perhaps 2,000 survivors from an army of 26,000. This is the worst defeat of his career, worse than any loss he has suffered before or will suffer after, except Arsuf against Richard the Lionheart 10 years later. He has been humiliated by a teenage leper king leading an army 1/5 his size, and Baldwin IV, 16 years old, rides back to Jerusalem in triumph. The city goes wild. This is not just a victory. This is a miracle. David has slain Goliath. The boy king has saved the kingdom. St. George himself fought alongside them, or so everyone believes. William of Tyre, usually restrained in his prose, writes, "The Lord showed a miracle that day." The Patriarch of Jerusalem declares it divine intervention. Across Christendom, when news arrives, it is celebrated as proof that God favors the Crusaders, that Jerusalem is under divine protection. Perhaps. But the miracle was not performed by God alone. It was performed by a dying boy who refused to surrender, who saw the impossible odds and attacked anyway, who bet everything on a single charge and won. Montgisard is the greatest victory of the Kingdom of Jerusalem over Saladin. It is one of the most remarkable military upsets in medieval history. It will be studied for centuries, and it will not matter, because Saladin will rebuild his army, and Baldwin will die. And 7 years after this perfect triumph, the kingdom will begin its final collapse. But for now, in November 1177, none of that is clear. For now, the boy king has saved Jerusalem, and the whole kingdom believes, hopes, prays, that maybe, somehow, this will be enough. After Montgisard, Saladin needs 3 years to rebuild his army and reputation. Baldwin needs 7 years to die. And in those 7 years, the kingdom is not torn apart by external enemies. It is killed from within. Baldwin's problem is not that he is a weak king. The problem is that he is a dying king. By 1180, when he is 19 years old, the disease can no longer be hidden. The fingers of both hands do not work. His face is disfigured. He is losing his sight. Sores cover his body. Sources describe how he is carried on a litter, how he cannot hold weapons, how his face is hidden under bandages, but the mind remains sharp. He rules. He commands the army. He makes decisions, but everyone knows he will die soon, and he has no heir. Leprosy makes him sterile. He will never marry. What noble family would give their daughter to a leper? He will have no children. After his death, the throne must pass to his sister Sibylla. But Sibylla is a woman. In the medieval world, a woman cannot rule alone. She must marry, and her husband will become king. This turns Sibylla's marriage into a political weapon. Whoever marries her gets the throne of Jerusalem. The nobility of the kingdom splits. Factions form, intrigue, a struggle for influence over Sibylla, over Baldwin, over the future. Sibylla's first husband, William Longsword, dies in 1177, the year of Montgisard. Their son Baldwin is the heir after Sibylla, but the boy is 3 years old. Who will be regent? Whoever controls the child controls the future of the kingdom. The intrigue begins. On one side, the court party, led by Raymond III, Count of Tripoli, the senior baron of the kingdom, an experienced military commander, an ally of Byzantium. He wants a policy of compromise with Saladin, temporary truces, caution. On the other side, the Queen's party, led by Baldwin's mother, Agnes of Courtenay, and her brother Jocelyn III. They want aggressive policy, war with Saladin, rely on knight adventurers arriving from Europe for glory and land. Baldwin, dying on the throne, tries to balance between factions. He knows, if the kingdom splits completely, Saladin will destroy it, but he cannot stop the intrigue, because his power rests on one thing, that he is alive, and he is dying. In 1180, an adventurer arrives in Jerusalem. His name is Reynald of Chatillon. Reynald is a French knight who came to the east in his youth. He was Prince of Antioch, was captured by Muslims, spent 16 years in a dungeon, was ransomed. Now he has returned, married a rich widow, received the lordship of Kirak, a powerful fortress east of the Dead Sea. Reynald is a warrior, cruel, reckless, hating Muslims with the fury of a man who spent half his life in their captivity. He does not recognize truces with Saladin. He attacks Muslim caravans, raids, kills. Baldwin orders him to stop. The truce with Saladin is fragile but necessary. The kingdom is too weak for constant war. Reynold ignores the orders. In 1182, Reynold attacks a caravan in which Saladin's sister is traveling. Saladin is enraged. He demands that Baldwin punish Reynold, return the plunder. Baldwin tries, but Reynold refuses to obey. Baldwin cannot force him. Too weak, too sick, too dependent on the loyalty of barons. Saladin declares the truce broken. War resumes. This is catastrophe. Baldwin knows the kingdom is not ready for war, but Reynold has unleashed it. In 1183, Saladin invades with a huge army. Baldwin, nearly blind, so sick that he is carried on a litter, marches to meet him. They meet at the springs of Sephoria. Baldwin deploys the army on a hill, takes a defensive position. Saladin sees the strong position and does not attack. Several days of standoff, then Saladin retreats. This is not a battle, this is a chess game. And Baldwin has won the move, forced Saladin to retreat without fighting. But the kingdom understands. The king can no longer fight. He cannot even sit on a horse. He is carried on a litter, like a relic. That same year, Baldwin makes a decision. He appoints a regent. His nephew, 5-year-old Baldwin V, is crowned co-ruler. Count Raymond III becomes regent. Formally, Baldwin IV is still king. Practically, he has abdicated. He is 22 years old, but the struggle for power continues. Baldwin's mother, Agnes, hates Raymond. She convinces her son that Raymond is a traitor, that he wants to seize the throne. Within months, Baldwin removes Raymond. The regent becomes Guy de Lusignan, Sibylla's new husband. Guy is a French knight adventurer, ambitious, a mediocre commander, a weak leader. He married Sibylla because he saw a path to the throne. Baldwin appoints him regent because there are no options. Raymond is unreliable. The nobility is divided. Guy is the husband of the heiress. Let him rule. This is a mistake. In 1184, Saladin invades again. Guy de Lusignan leads the army to meet him. He is confused, indecisive, does not know when to attack, when to retreat. The army stands, wasting time while Saladin pillages the country. Baldwin, lying on his deathbed in Jerusalem, receives the news. Guy has failed. Baldwin rises, literally. His body is so destroyed that he cannot stand, but he orders them to carry him on a litter to the army. A blind, disfigured, dying king on a litter takes command from a healthy, strong regent. The army sees this, the decaying body of the king carried on a litter, taking command. And the army remembers Montgisard, remembers who this man is. Saladin sees that Baldwin is commanding again and retreats. He does not want to fight the leper king, even dying. Baldwin returns to Jerusalem. He removes Guy from the post of regent. He deprives Sibylla of the right of inheritance if she remains married to Guy. But this last effort exhausts him. The disease finishes him. Spring, 1185. Baldwin is 24 years old. He is dying. Sources do not describe his last days in detail. William of Tyre, his tutor, writes briefly, King Baldwin IV died, exhausted by a long illness. His body, destroyed, disfigured, blind, finally stops fighting. He is buried in Jerusalem, in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, a king who ruled for 11 years, who won impossible battles, who held the kingdom together by force of will when the body no longer obeyed. But the kingdom he defended dies with him. His nephew Baldwin V becomes king at 6 years old. The regent, again, Raymond III. A year later, in 1186, Baldwin V dies, poisoned or disease, unknown. Sibylla is crowned queen. She immediately crowns her husband, Guy de Lusignan, king, contrary to her brother's will. The kingdom splits. Raymond III and other barons refuse to recognize Guy. Internal war begins. Saladin watches and prepares. July 4th, 1187. Hatton. Guy de Lusignan leads the kingdom's army to meet Saladin. 20,000 Crusaders against 30,000 Muslims. Guy makes every possible mistake. He leads the army through the desert in July heat, without water, to the hills of Hattin, where Saladin has taken position by the springs. The Crusaders are dying of thirst before the battle even begins. Saladin sets fire to the dry grass. Smoke and heat finish the job. The battle is slaughter. The kingdom's army is destroyed. The Knights Templar and Hospitallers are executed. Guy de Lusignan is captured. Reynald of Chatillon, the cause of the war, is beheaded personally by Saladin. 3 months later, on October 2nd, 1187, Saladin enters Jerusalem. After 88 years since its capture by the First Crusade, the city is Muslim again. The kingdom has fallen. Guy de Lusignan, the man Baldwin tried to remove from power, has lost everything Baldwin defended. Montgisard was in vain. 11 years of rule, in vain. All the sacrifices, all the pain, all the struggle, in vain. 2 years after Baldwin IV's death, the Kingdom of Jerusalem ceased to exist. So why did Baldwin lose? He was a brilliant commander. Montgisard proves this, defeating Saladin at 16, with an army 5 times smaller. This is a miracle of military art. He was a strong-willed ruler. Even blind on a litter, he commanded the army and made Saladin retreat. He was a smart politician. He balanced between factions, tried to preserve the unity of the kingdom, and still, he lost. The simple answer, because leprosy killed him at 24. If he had been healthy, he would have ruled for another 30 years. He could have had heirs. The dynasty would have been stable. Saladin would never have taken Jerusalem. But this is too simple. Baldwin's real problem was not the disease. It was that his power rested on personal authority, on the fact that he was alive. A medieval kingdom is not a modern state. It is a network of personal connections. A king rules because barons are loyal to him. Barons are loyal because the king is strong, successful, capable of protecting and rewarding them. Baldwin was strong. As long as he could command the army, as long as he could win battles, as long as he could make decisions, barons obeyed. But everyone knew. He is dying. His power is temporary. And after his death, the struggle for the throne will begin. Therefore, barons did not unite around him. They built factions, prepared for the future, for his future, which would not exist. Baldwin could not create an heir, could not transfer power, could not ensure continuity, and this killed the kingdom. There is a deeper paradox. Baldwin was the perfect defender of the kingdom, brave, smart, invincible in battle. But the kingdom did not need a defender. It needed a dynasty builder. Baldwin could defeat Saladin on the battlefield, but he could not solve the succession problem. And the succession problem is more important than any battle. Montgisard saved the kingdom for 7 years. A stable dynasty would have saved it for centuries. Baldwin won battles, but he lost the war for the future. There is another irony. Saladin, Baldwin's main enemy, outlived him by only a few years. In 1193, 8 years after Baldwin's death, Saladin dies of fever in Damascus. He is 55 or 56 years old. His empire, united by his personal charisma, immediately disintegrates. His sons divide the domains and begin fighting each other. Saladin also did not solve the succession problem. The difference is that Saladin managed to take Jerusalem. Baldwin only managed to defend it. The Third Crusade, launched in response to the fall of Jerusalem, will partially restore the kingdom. Richard the Lionheart will recapture the coast. The Crusader states will last another 100 years. But Jerusalem will never again be a Christian kingdom in the Middle Ages. Baldwin IV defended the city until his last breath and lost 2 years after his death. So what can we say about Baldwin? He is one of the most tragic heroes of the Middle Ages. A boy king with a body destroyed by leprosy, but with an unbroken spirit. A commander who defeated the greatest enemies while blind and confined to a litter. He fought a disease that cannot be defeated. He fought political intrigue that cannot be stopped. He fought for a kingdom that could not be saved. And he lost. Not because he was weak, not because he was stupid, not because he gave up. He lost because some battles cannot be won. Some enemies are stronger than any courage. His body was an enemy he could not defeat. Time was an enemy he could not stop. The dynastic crisis was an enemy he could not resolve. Baldwin could win any battle, but he could not win the war against his own mortality. And that is the paradox. The greatest defender of Jerusalem could not save it, because defense is not the same as salvation. You can hold the walls for years, but if after your death there is no one to hold them further, the walls will fall. Baldwin held the walls for 11 years, by force of will, by force of character, by force of personal example, but he was mortal. And when he died, the walls fell. A final touch of irony. 700 years after his death, Baldwin IV became a symbol. The film Kingdom of Heaven showed him to the world, the leper king in a silver mask, wise, brave, tragic. Not a perfect film historically, but it captured the essence. Baldwin is the image of the perfect knight, brave in battle, merciful to enemies, wise in rule, steadfast in suffering. He did not save Jerusalem, but he showed how it should be defended. To the end, without surrender. Even when the body is destroyed, even when defeat is inevitable. This is not victory, but this is dignity. And perhaps, in history, this is more important. Because Saladin is remembered as a great conqueror, but Baldwin is remembered as a great man. A man who could not defeat death, but defeated the fear of it. A man who could not save the kingdom, but saved his honor. A man who lost the war, but did not lose himself. In the Middle Ages, this was called chivalry. Today, we might call it dignity in the face of the inevitable. Baldwin IV died at 24, a leper, blind, destroyed. But he died a king, and 800 years later, we still remember him, not for victories, for how he lost. If you found this valuable, please consider subscribing. We're building a library of deep dives into history's most important but often overlooked figures, and there's a lot more to explore. Thanks for watching.